Simplifying expressions, H1N1. As with the previous epidemics, epidemiologists have studied the progression of the virus in order to understand how it's transmitted, where it's spread, and the rate of hospitalizations. When they have collected their data, they use distributive property to identify trends among like terms or variables. So let's simplify one of these equations together, which is right here. Before we begin, remember that when simplifying a larger equation, it is always important to follow the order of operations. Therefore, we will distribute, which is the same as multiplying, before we add or subtract like terms. So in this example, we have two distributions, and then we have several different variables that we need to be combined. So because multiplication comes before combining like terms, we need to distribute. So we have 4 times 1x, so that will give us 4x. Then we multiply 4 times 5y, so it gives us 20y. Now 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Then we move on to the negative 3 and distribute. So negative 3 times x is minus 3x. Minus 3 times 2, which is negative 6, and minus 3 times negative 5y to give us a positive 15y. So now we have all our terms, and we've multiplied it all out. So now we can combine. So let's kind of highlight to know that what we're doing. So we have the 4x and the 3x. And then in green, we will highlight the 20y and the 15y. And lastly, we will highlight in blue just the numbers, which is negative 4 and negative 6. So we have 4x minus 3x. We need to do this one first, or we don't have to. We can do whatever order, but this is the one we are choosing to do first now. And then we will add plus 20y plus 15y, which those we will add together, and then the minus 4 minus 6. So now it's kind of all in order. So let's go from left to right. 4x minus 3x is equal to 1x. Then we add 20y plus 15y is 35y. Then, lastly, we go minus 4 minus 6, which is equal to negative 10, or minus 10. So, now we can leave the 1 in front of the x, or we can remove it. As you can see, each number has its own variable, and therefore we cannot add or subtract any further, so this is our solution. Now, let's work through another example together. However, this time, let's simplify an equation that has been used to determine the rate of hospitalizations per region. So we first begin by looking in the parentheses to determine if there's anything that can be done in there. And since the information in the parentheses is already simplified, as in there's no way we can combine any of these terms, we move on to exponents. As we always remember the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we looked at parentheses, now we can look at E for exponents, and we can see that there's nothing we can do for exponents because the x with the squared does not need to be done. So we can leave as is. So now we move on to multiplication and division, which is also the same as in this equation as distribution. So our first parentheses, we will distribute the 2. So we begin. So 2 times 3x squared is 6x squared. 2 times negative 5x is minus 10x. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So we'll add plus 4 there. Then, on the second distribution, it looks like we don't have to distribute, but in fact we do because we have that negative sign. which is really important to look at. So we will distribute essentially the negative sign, or you can think of it as -1. So the negative sign in front of the 2x squared becomes minus 2x squared. Then we have negative times 5x to give us minus 5x. And then at the very end, we will now multiply the negative times the 7 to get minus 7. So now let's combine these like terms, which are the x squareds, just the regular x's, and finally just the numbers. So we get 6x squared minus 2x squared minus 10x minus 5x plus 4 minus 7. So we will now work left to right. 6x squared minus 2x squared is 4x squared. Minus 10x minus 5x is minus 15x. Positive 4 minus 7 is now equal to -3. So this is our final answer because we can no longer do any more addition or subtraction. So in summary, when simplifying equations, remember that there is always a 1 in front of a parentheses that has no number. And there is always a 1 in front of a variable that has no number, such as like just x. So essentially you can put 1x. So it is important to always use the order of operations when simplifying, and distributive property falls into the multiplication step.